So in today's lesson, we're talking about finding slope. Slope is the steepness of a line. So you can find slope a few different ways. If you have a graph and a picture on slope, you can just look at the graph and you can count. Things to remember about slope is its rise over run. And we usually represent slope with the letter M. So slope equals rise over run. Well, that is your change in y, or your delta y, over delta x. That delta symbol means change. So if I have a line, and let's say this line looks like that, you have to do your slope change from left to right. So you're going to pick two exact points on that line, and I might pick this point right here, and I might pick this point. It does not matter which two exact points you pick, how far away they are or how close they are, none of that matters. You just need two exact points. And you have to start on the left and move to the right. So to get from point 1 to point 2, you're going to go up 2. Well, up is positive, so it's a positive rise. And you're going to go over 4. Well, that was to the right, which is also positive. So positive 4 will be your run. What you need to remember with slope is you always have to simplify that fraction. 2 over 4 is 1 over 2. So if we look at number 1 on 3.4 finding slope, you're going to see a picture of a line that is at a point 2, 1 and 4, negative 2. So that graph on number 1 looks like that. And we definitely have a point here and here. Now remember, we start left to right. So we're going to start at point 1 and go to point 2. And we always do our rise over run, because slope equals rise over run. All right, so from point 1 to 2, we go down. 1, 2, 3. Down is negative, so our rise is a negative 3. And we go to the right, 1, 2. Well, on a number line, to the right is positive, and to the left is negative. So that was a positive run, which is 2. That is a simplified fraction already, so the correct answer would be C, negative 3 over 2. And that's how you're going to work numbers 1 through 9. 1 through 10. But when you get to number 11, you've got a couple of points. You don't have a picture. So on number 11, you're going to be using the formula for slope, which is M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This formula you need to ingrain in your brain and know it forever. So if we look at number 11, on number 11 you're given 2 points, 19, negative 12, and 17, 12. When you have 2 points, you need to number 1 and make it number 1. Number the other one and make it number 2. It makes no difference which you pick for which. You will get the correct answer if you do your subtraction correctly. You could make the first one number 2 and the second one number 1, and it would come out exactly the same. It doesn't matter, but you need to pick one and label it number 1, and pick the other one and label it number 2. So y2 means the y coordinate for point number 2. So since I chose the last one to be point number 2, y2 will be 12. If I had reversed those numbers, my y2 may have been something different. y1 means the y coordinate for point number 1, which is a negative 12. Notice this minus sign I've already written right here. That minus sign comes out of the formula, and you have to write it every time. Well, the y1 is a negative 12. Okay? x2 is the x coordinate for point 2, which will be 17. The minus sign is part of the formula, so you have to write it every time. Every time you're going to put that minus sign. x1 is the x coordinate for point number 1, which is 19. Now it's just a matter of simplifying this fraction. So 12 minus negative 12 is the same as 12 plus positive 12, which is 24. 17 minus 19 is the same as 17 plus negative 19. That's a negative 2. When you simplify that fraction, you get negative 12. So the last of these is a matter of plugging those points into that formula for slope, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now when you get to number 21, you're using a different method to find slope. Slope is very important, and it's found all throughout algebra and graphing. So if we look at something that's known as slope-intercept form, it's a way to write the equation of a line, or a linear equation, in a way so that you can see the slope and the intercept from that equation. It's in the format y equals mx plus b, where your b is your intercept, and we haven't covered that yet, and the m is your slope. Remember, I told you that we usually refer to slope as m. Okay, so if you look at number 21, the equation is y equals negative 5 over 2x minus 1. Well, your slope is the coefficient for the x, so slope equals negative 5 over 2. So if you have y by itself, if you have isolated y as a variable, all you need to do is look at the coefficient of your x, and that is your slope. That is only when y is by itself, and it's in the format y equals mx plus b. Now, there are some other ways to write the equations of lines, and that is when you have either a horizontal line or a vertical line. And those are different. They just really don't fit the rules of anything. So if we had the line, let's say x equals 2, that would be, this line. Since it's x equals 2, it crosses the x-axis at 2. Well, let's figure out the slope of this line. Let's just pick 2 points on the line. And right away we realize, this is hard to go from left to right, isn't it? And our rule is to go from left to right, but it really can't go from left to right here. Well, let's just pretend, and let's do point number 1 and point number 2. So point number 1, the one that I've labeled, and there's an infinite number of points on this line. I just picked these two. Is 2, 1, and 2, negative 3. Well, let's put it in the formula for slope as best we can. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my y2 is the y value for point number 2. My y1 is the y value for point number 1, and so on. So this is going to turn into negative 3. You have to write the minus sign over 2 minus, you got to write that minus sign, 2. So the top of that is negative 3 plus a negative 1, that's negative 4, and the bottom of that is 2 minus 2, which is 0. Now any calculator that you put that into is going to give you an error. You cannot have a 0 as a denominator for a fraction. Therefore, the slope of a vertical line, or a straight up and down line, is undefined. So anytime you put points in to your slope equation and you get an undefined value, or one that has a 0 for the denominator, that's undefined slope, and that's a straight up and down line. Well, the equation for that line is x equals 2. It's awfully hard to put the equation x equals 2 into slope-intercept form, because to get to slope-intercept form, you have to solve for y. So therefore, any equation that looks like this one and does not have a y has an undefined slope, and it's straight up and down. So that leads me to the next type of line, which would be one that was flat or horizontal. So let's look at the equation y equals negative 3. So that would be this line here. And what would you guess would be this? Your change in your line, or your steepness in your line. Your rise over your run. And you may not be able to just guess it right off the top of your head. Let's plug some points into our formula for slope. Remember, we go from left to right. So if we had this point, that would be negative 2, negative 3, and that's number 1. And then maybe this point, which would be number 2, and that would be 7, negative 3. All right, so let's plug them in. So my y2 is negative 3 minus my y1, which is negative 3. Don't ever forget to put this minus sign as part of the formula, and so is the one on the bottom. That's the biggest mistake with slope, is you leave out that minus sign. x2 is 7, and x1 is negative 2. Excuse me. Both of those minus negatives turn into plus positives. So negative 3 plus 3 is 0. 7 plus 2 is 9. 0 divided by 9 is 0. You can have a 0 in the numerator, you just can't have one in the denominator. So the slope of a flat or horizontal line is 0. The equation of this line is y, because it crosses the y-axis, y equals negative 3, because that's where it crosses. Okay, well, you might think to yourself, how would I write that in slope-intercept form? So let's look at the equation y equals negative 3, and let's see if it's possible to put that in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Well, you have a y, and it's already isolated. The problem is this x term is missing. Well, if slope was 0, that would be 0 times x minus 3. And it doesn't matter what x is. If you multiply it by 0, it goes away. And it simplifies to y equals negative 3. So any line that has an equation y equals an integer, or y equals a real number, the slope is always 0, or it's a flat line. So that makes me wonder about two special lines on our graph, the x and the y-axis. So the x and the y-axis, they're also just lines. The thing that makes them special is they cross at the special point in the middle, which is the origin. So the equation of the x-axis, what axis does this cross? Well, it crosses the y-axis. And where does it cross the y-axis? At 0. Well, the slope of the x-axis is also 0 because it's flat. So here's the equation of the line, which is the x-axis, and the slope is 0. Well, the y-axis is different. The y-axis crosses which other axis? The x. So if you cross the x-axis, your equation is x equals. And where does it cross it? At 0. That is the equation of the y-axis. Well, the slope is undefined because I think we all know that the y-axis is a vertical line. Straight up and down lines that have equations x equals have an undefined slope. So on this activity, when you get to number 36, things take a little turn because you no longer have those given to you in slope-intercept form. The equations are given in standard form, which looks like ax plus by equals c. So for you to see the slope, you have to rearrange them using your equation solving skills that you've learned into slope-intercept form or solve for y. So let's look at number 39. Number 39 has 6x minus 5y equal negative 10. You have to get this y by itself before you can see the slope. So let's subtract 6x from both sides. Now I hope you're not going to say that that is negative 16x because those are not like terms. And always remember x's are very pushy. So your x is going to push its way right in the front. So the negative 6x pushed right in front of that negative 10. X's are pushy, always remember that. Now this coefficient on the y has to be dealt with, so we're going to divide every single piece by negative 5. You're going to divide each piece individually by negative 5. So then y will equal, now negative 6 over negative 5 will turn into a positive 6 over 5, and negative 10 over negative 5 will turn into a positive 2. This is the hardest part of slope, is isolating this y variable. But once you do, you can see your slope right away because y equals mx plus b is slope-intercept form. And your slope is the coefficient of your x. So for number 39, the slope is 6 over 5. So the correct answer is D. Okay, that is all about slope and all the ways to find it. Good luck.